Hello, parents. How are you? This is Coach Hanson, and I've got something very special for you today. You know, if you've ever felt or you feel overwhelmed, being, as Katherine describes it, fired by your child, that means they no longer want to communicate with you, or you're tired of the sassy backchat, tears and tantrums, you're in the right place right now. Today, please allow me to explain. Today's guest is a 3-time TEDx speaker, parenting coach, mom of 2, and creator of the Conscious Parenting Revolution. And for over 20 years, she's been helping families thrive by using the guidance approach to parenting. And today, she will be revealing the approach to you and giving you the keys to move forward if any of these problems are bothering you. Friends, live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, please join me to give a warm welcome to our very special guest today, Miss Katherine Sellery. Where is she? Good morning, Katherine.
Hello. Hi, Hanson. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, I'm really excited. So excuse my little jitter fingers, and I've pressed this technology. But anybody who's watching us out there, we've been chatting. Katherine and I have been chatting for a couple of weeks now and talking about building this up. And the message resonated with me so deeply, you know, as a coach for over 20 years. And this particular angle that Katherine is touched on really resonated with me. And I just wanted to share this with anybody who is in my network. So Katherine, let's get into it.
Great. I'd love to. So I'd just be curious. I know you're the father of 2 younger kids. How old are your children?
10 and 13.
10 and 13. Okay, great.
Yeah,
so you've got a little bit of the teen stuff going on.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, what I'm guessing resonated deeply is that you liked the idea of having ways to connect with your kids that didn't involve rewards and punishments.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed the transition, like I always say to our students who are usually 10 to 12, is those years, parents, are incredible years because the kids are not developed their social emotional so much into when they're 8 to 12. It's that they start to have a body of their own and a mind of their own and start to stand on their own feet, and they want that independence. And we welcome that. However, it's the transition from being a baby, being a little kid that just does as he says and falls into line and follows the orders of the house until they start to actually stand on their feet. And so, Katherine, that's where I think majority of our parents are sitting, between the ages of 6 to 12 and on the cusp of that adolescence. So yes, I'm getting the sassy talk. I'm getting the talk back. I'm getting all this now. And it's how to embrace that, you know, and empower them to have their own and to build that relationship with the family, which is respectful and, you know, maintain those relationships.
Totally. So, you know, and it's interesting because you spoke about how before that you would have children that are cooperating and children that are kind of following the leader. But for a lot of people that may be on this line now, they actually found the pushback started much earlier.
Oh, right. Wow. Wow.
And so, you know, when I talk about that, I talk about the belongers versus the autonomous child. Okay. And so you would have the belonger who is more willing to cooperate and cares about what you think of them.
Yes.
And then you have the autonomous child who still cares, but they're more connected to their own self-determination and what they want to do. And as a result, they will push back.
Right.
So those kids push back a lot earlier. And I mean, you know, my journey, as you know, by watching some of the TED Talks, really was that at a very young age, I had a daughter who, you know, really by 2, 3, she was so her own mind that it was really hard to get cooperation. And I needed to really learn a lot more about human behavior in order to work with that kind of child.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so
that's really good. Sorry to cut you off. That's really, really good for the people who will be watching this now or watching on the replay. You're covering a spectrum here today.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the kids that tend to, you know, want to please you and want to, you know, have things go smoothly. Those are the kids that I see those parents less often.
Okay.
Because there's no pushback, there's no retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. Those are the kids that are already just wanting to please.
Right.
Eventually, if they felt like they had to swallow their inner voice long enough and over time, then they may get resentful. And that might be when I would meet the parents of that child, because they're kind of deer in headlights going, I don't know what happened, because they were always doing, like what I wanted. And now they're not. And it's like, well, oh my God, how did that happen? All of a sudden, those kids started to show that they didn't feel like they were getting to express their side, or that they weren't heard. And they might not have known how to, or were afraid to show that in the past. And as they got a little bit older, they weren't as afraid.
Right. And maybe, Katherine, you can see with the kids that we see how they act in front of their parents in public, and then behind closed doors, they act differently. I mean, I've seen that with my two boys, and outside they're pleasing, but then they're also holding grudges, or they're also uncomfortable in their skin around their parents because of maybe it's been authoritarian, or it's been authoritative but not managed, or the language is incorrect and inconsistent. I've personally found that the language was key for me. I mean, you want to share about this and how important this is?
Yeah, well, what I hear you saying is that they've learned what behaviors they can show their parents,
right,
and which ones they can't. Right. So they have a whole other life over here that they don't reveal, because they know if their parents knew all of them, that they wouldn't go out of the house again. And so they hide everything that they know my dad aren't going to like.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really meet mom and dad's objectives. Mom and dad's objectives are that they not want to do those activities, or that they themselves see the activity as dangerous or something that doesn't resonate with them. But when you're using power over your kids, generally, even if the value were a value that your child might have embraced, there's so much resistance or push against that demanding approach to behavior modification that it just gets all lost.
Right. So do you find that it's at what, I mean, you said that you had two children who had different kind of behaviors at an early age, and they were pushing back. And do you find that if we keep that strong arm approach, like I find it myself, I mean, we're conditioned by our past.
Sure.
And we hold no grudges against our parents. Well, I hope you've done your self-work, parents. And we hold no grudges against being chased around the house with a horsewhip or with a belt or whatever. I mean,
wow, that's a lot.
But I love my dad, and the stories that I hear from parents are not too dissimilar from that. I mean, it was the old strong arm tactics, and there is a residual of that we carry through. And unfortunately, we need to do our work on us, and this is why I reach out to people such as yourself who are experts in this changing. But we've got to be willing to make that change. And I find that in a lot of parents are like so stoic in this mentality that my way works, but by the age of like 8, 9, 10, 11, and if not then by 12, 13, you will know, but you're the expert, there's a lot of fallout at that age where kids just don't want to talk to their parents anymore.
Yeah, that's when the parents could get fired. They may have been fired a long time ago. They just didn't know it.
Right.
Because their measuring stick for what they thought of as a relationship was that the other person do as they were told.
Right.
And
now they're not doing as they're told.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of different things that I would say about what you just brought up. One of them is that I think that, and I've seen it over the years, where parents themselves have experienced a very power over from their family of origin parenting. They may duplicate it with the perspective of, well, it worked out fine for me. I've heard that. And or they may decide that I'll do whatever I can to learn what I can to not do that to another human being.
Right.
So, when your focus is on heartfelt connection, then how you solve problems, how you discuss what the narrative is. If you're going to approach things from a solo, I said, it's up to me, I'm the boss, I'm the parent because I said so. If you have that kind of mentality, then the other person isn't going to feel that safe about mattering, or that their perspective matters, because, children are people too. And they have needs just as we do. They also have wants, and wants and needs are not the same. And how they want to meet their needs, we may object to. But the fact that they have the need to be met, we don't object to. So how can we have these very particular conversations about honoring that the needs are important and that they be met? And that the conversation really isn't about whether the need is met. It's more about how you're going to go about meeting the need. Right.
And communication between the two parties, the child and the parents. And then if you're in a relationship, if it's husband and wife, or, two adults raising a child, it's a different dynamic to somebody such as myself and many other people who are single parent raising. And so, we don't have that extra person to have to bounce off. And sometimes we have blind spots because of that as well. So, it is incredibly tough. So in your guidance approach, I imagine you would ask lots of questions first, as you've asked me about my personal situation and observations, what I've seen in our coaching practice, where we coach lots of kids and we teach them life skills and adventure learning through playing sport. And our observations over the last 20 years, that's why we're really into it, Katherin, because it's just so intriguing to watch the behavior of a child when they come to us compared to when they were coming with the parent and going home with the parent. And what we were able to achieve with that kid, having them climb trees and jump creeks, and, it's very, very different. And so I'm very intrigued about that. And that's why I wanted to, double down in it. So this guidance approach, where do we start? I mean, if we have, this sassy talk back, or, the child is being, what did you call the two types of child that are coming into our lives?
With the belonger and the autonomous child.
The autonomous, right. Okay, so if we've got those coming into our life at any age, be it 3 or 6, or in my case, luckily, 12, 13, then is it one size fits all approach from the guidance perspective that we can build on that, or how do we go about it?
Well, I think that when we look at kids who are wanting to please us, which was my first child. So my son was very much just didn't want to upset anybody. He's a real peacemaker. And then of course our daughter was just so different in terms of wanting to be self-determined, wanting to follow her own drummer inside, and how to navigate that, where our son was willing to kind of just go along with the flow, super easy. And our daughter was not willing to do that because she had her own ideas about how she wanted to spend her time. And so it was like, wow, how do I parent these two very different personalities? And of course it seems, and it is in so many ways, if you don't have the child who's pushing back at all, it's easier. And so, for me, the first 4.5 years with just that one child, and then our daughter was born in such a different personality. And I'd already been coaching as a parent coach for like 3 or 4 years when my daughter was born. And I thought I had a handle on this. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I don't even have like the vaguest idea. So I got to start all over again. And now they're both in their 20s. And so we've come a long way. Yes. And what I realized was that Sam, our son, really did need to know difference of opinion. That he could actually speak up and object. And that was important to really enforce, because he was so centered as someone who, is intrinsically interested in other people and harmony. And that was his demeanor. And so that's a beautiful demeanor. And it makes life so simple when you have people who are interested in what other people's experiences are, self-correct, all the rest of it. And the challenge that I learned later was, wow, now that I have the opposite child, I realize you really need to know that you can stand in whatever your truth is and speak from that place without it being disrespectful or without, possibly I'll have a difference of opinion and we might have a conflict, but it doesn't mean that you need to silence yourself.
Right.
And with our daughter, it was about, oh, wow. Okay. So now we have someone who doesn't silence herself. She's really clear. And this is really where we need to work around. And other people have their own voices as well. So how do we all in this family now, everybody feel like they're connected to their voice? And how do we share that without one dominating the other or marginalizing the other? Like it's a very different conversation. Like just determining everything is through a conversation. How are we going to meet our needs? What are we going to do this weekend? How would you like to spend your time? And, I can't force you to want to do what Dad and I want to do, but we would love for you guys to want to do that. And if you don't want to do that, what would you like to do? So, it's a really around, like for me, it's all about connection.
Right. And so being that a lot of parents will have two of one type of child, and maybe a mix like you, or possibly two that are very autonomous from day one and just pushing back all the time.
Yeah.
So establishing those boundaries. I mean, everybody on the internet, who you look at parenting, they're always talking about boundaries and setting the boundaries and all of this. It seems so easy on the surface, but getting into that conversation, Katherin, I've seen is difficult and it changes over time. So we can't use one parenting style from 3-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 12-year-old that's going to work. And I find in discussions with parents that they're frustrated because they get to 8 or 9 and the child's developing and they're changing. And I found this myself. I'm like, oh, wake up. I can't rely on that textbook or that methodology. I actually need to change. And evolve. And with one boy of mine to the other, they are like you had, they are very different. Those who are watching, parents who are watching, please put in the comments and let us know if you've had or you do have this similar situation, you find that it's changed over the years. So right now where I'm at, if I can, be so honest and authentic with you about this, is the 13-year-old, Harley. He's a wonderful kid with an incredible heart and he does such kind gestures, but he's struggling with his new skin. And so when you have a 10-year-old or, parents who are watching, if you've got a younger sibling and an elder sibling, you also have a dynamic at play here where one is maturing and adolescent and wants to be a young man or a young woman for some of you parents. And then you've got the other sibling who is still being babied and led along a little bit. And so these dynamics, Katherin, there is not one size fits all, of course, but we all, when you look at that parenting stuff online, it just makes it look so easy about boundaries. So where do you suggest that parents approach this?
Well, I'm interested because I think boundaries are so tricky. And, I understand when you say one size doesn't fit all. And I would say that what I know is that how you relate to each child is going to be different because you're different personalities. However, if you're using a modality which is based in people feeling safe to share their feelings, and being able to tie their feelings to their underlying needs, which are unmet, and then being able to speak about, in this situation, I'm really struggling to meet my needs for how to stay connected to my, desires. When it seems like if I do that, you get really mad at me, Mom or Dad. And I'm getting the impression that the only way you want me to be with you is to do it your way. Right. So now that's a very, very big conversation. Yes. And what child has the skills to be able to navigate through an older person who thinks that children should maybe do as they're told, that would be a very, like, I would just say the container is probably psychologically unsafe for that child to be able to share in that way. So what are the things that every parent can do? And that actually, I would say, regardless of age, is important to do. And that's to create the psychologically safe container for children to be able to share what's really going on, not just what you want to hear. So, you know, we started off by talking about the kids that have an alter life over here, because they've learned there are about 4 behaviors mom and dad want to hear about, and the other 5,000 they never want to know about. And so, you know, it reminds me of that movie, you know, You Can't Handle the Truth. And a lot of parents can't handle the truth. They don't want the truth. They just want to hear what they want to hear. And children are really smart, and they'll just deliver up and serve up what you want to hear. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant, because most parents don't want to know the truth. If they hear it, they'll go get super triggered.
Yes. Right.
And then they become, probably, it's quite possible, like, again, cultivating a psychologically unsafe environment for that child. So, you know, I like to work with parents to support them at how to create the environment in which their children can be authentic and share what's going on for them. Because if that's true, if your children are able to do that, then you'll start to get all of them, not just the one little slice that you would otherwise be communicating as the only one that you really want. So if you want to get all of it, you know, you have to be ready for all of it, right?
Parents, do we want it all? We got to, sometimes we just got to bite it and just say, get real. You know, it's not just what we want. Like you said, it's what their needs are as well. And so it's our way or the highway, or it's, we have to cooperate. And I think, Katherine, if I'm hearing you correctly, the earlier that we start, it's never too late, but the earlier we start to really listen.
Yes.
And really get them involved in making decisions for their weekend, writing down things. One thing I do is I ask them what you want to do for the next month of weekends. I want you to write them down, put them in a jar, and we will pull them out. If the weather is right, we will do those things. So they're involved in the process of choosing what they want to do on the weekends. Beautiful. It's not just what we are doing, you know, and I've found that's really, really helped.
Yeah.
So
you know, my parents say to me over the years that, you know, I spent a fortune on those tickets to do this, that, or the other thing. And they're so mad because their children are ungrateful. And, you know, I go, well, okay, but did you ask them if they wanted to do that? And are you sure that they're, quote unquote, ungrateful? Or is it just that they never wanted to do it in the first place? And they've been made to feel like they have to, as opposed to they chose to. So we often set up the situations ourselves, and we're all guilty of it. I'm certainly guilty of it, where, you know, I can remember we lived in Hong Kong, as you know, for 30 years, and Chinese New Year is a big deal. And we would have a couple of families that we would get together at Chinese New Year with, and we would go to banquet, and then we would go down to the neighborhood fair that was going on, you know, in the little town where we lived, and, you know, pick out our cherry blossom, you know, all the rest of it. And so it was really fun. And my daughter's like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. She was probably a teenager. She's probably like 15, I would say. And, you know, I'm going to get to see Auntie Media and Auntie this and Auntie that. And I was like, yeah, me too. It's one of my favorite times of years. By the end of the day, she was tired and she didn't want to go anymore.
Yes.
That was just not okay with me. And I really wanted her to go. And so I forced her to go. Right. So here I am, the parenting coach, forcing my child to go. And we got there, and she sat throughout the entire dinner like this, you know, on her phone, didn't even look up. And my friend said to me, did you make her come?
Wow.
It was so obvious, right? I was like, oh my God, I know. Can you believe it? And my husband was saying, I can't believe that you did that. And I was like, I know, me too. So, you know, what is it that at times we resort to our power?
Yes.
And, you know, and every time we fall down and resort to our power, we learn that there's a resentment flow connected to it. And we may get what we wanted. I could make my daughter go. And then she got there and was just completely miserable. And and it was obvious that making her go when she was tired and didn't want to go was not going to be a solution.
Yeah. It's all about us a lot of the time. And but we, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. We really, all parents, we all mean well, but it's the approach and tuning in, that connection. I've found that, Katherine, just how to connect deeper with the parents and establish those boundaries comes from connection and listening, right?
Yeah. And, establish the boundaries to me is just, everybody means something different by that. So I just want to ask, what do you mean when you say that?
Okay, so what I'm thinking about is, when I say the boundaries, is when you've got events like that are coming up and that it's been discussed and everybody's intended to go, and then the wind changes. We need to be able to be flexible to change that. But where do we draw the line and say, this is what we've agreed on? We need to have some sort of integrity, and this is where our boundary is for making a commitment to auntie so-and-so or uncle so-and-so, or even going to school. There are certain commitments and certain legal requirements about going to school or attending school on time and these kind of things that help us maintain that integrity of our word. Now, if we're going to do something and we've committed to doing something and then last minute pull out, it's okay in the big scheme of things, but it becomes a habit that I'm now not going to do that because it's something that the family is going to do, and I'm just going to pull out. And so what I'm asking about is these boundaries of mutual respect, and where do we be flexible on that, but not to create a habit of flexibility, because I'm concerned, Katherine, that parents say, okay, when we say we're going to do something, we do something, and then they're too flexible on it. And then it comes back to bite them because it just becomes a habit of excuse. Oh, I'm on the phone with my friends, or I want to watch this movie, I don't want to go. So the point in case is, a couple of weeks ago on Sunday, we always call it Sunday Fun Day, and we always go out as a family and we do stuff, right? That's fine. He's coming of age and he says, Dad, I'm not going to go. Doesn't matter what you say, what you do, I'm not going to go. So of course I've gone through the checklist. This is something that we've done for a long time. It's very important to me. It makes me feel really good to spend that time with you, away from gadgets and away from everything, so we can go and surf and we can do stuff. Yada, 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 yada. Everybody knows the story. And it means a lot to me if you can come. And then silence and no, I'm not going, doesn't matter what you do. So I went and did something else and I came back. And I reiterated that again, trying to be, just be very calm. And I said, well, okay, on this occasion, I will allow you to make this decision. And we will go. I will see you at 2 p.m., Harley, and have a great morning off. And I thought, this is based on what I've learned. I thought that was a good approach. The problem now is that he knows he has an out, which is not a big problem in the big scheme of things. But for me, and this is what we're talking about, parents, we would like that we have that time to share together each week. And now I feel that it's open to say, no, I'm not going. Yes, I'm going. No, I'm not going. Yes, I'm going. So this is what I'm talking about. Boundaries on things that we commit to.
Right. So I would say that it's very hard if someone hasn't felt as though they were invited in the beginning to share their perspective of what they wanted to do on Sundays.
Right.
It's hard for them to feel like they're choosing to go with you. Right. Because it doesn't feel like choice anymore. It feels like have to energy.
And it's a habit. Yeah.
So have to energy is very different from choosing energy. So I would say that up until now, Harley didn't have the urge inside to do something different and was really happy to have these wonderful Sundays with Dad and his brother. And now he's gotten a little bit older, and how he's sensing into what he wants to do and whether he wants to have more time on his own, a whole bunch of different things open up. Yes. And so the conversations are collaborative. Again, whenever you have a problem solve, if one person is coming down from on high and it's a solo conversation, then it's going to be less effective than when it's collaborative. Right. So it really would be, if I were you, I would be sitting down and I would be saying to Harley, hey, Harley, why don't we talk about Sundays?
Yep.
Because up until now, this is what we've done as a family. Yep. And it seems like on the basis of what, happened last Sunday, that, maybe that was a one-off, maybe not. I'm not really sure, but I'd love to know more about what it is that's going on for you and how you'd like to spend your time, because we have our individual needs and then we have our interpersonal needs.
Yes.
Right. And so, it seems to me that you're basically speaking about those interpersonal needs, where it's not so much about my needs, it's about my need to be with you. And I know you have a need to be with me too. And that we used to do that in many ways, but a lot of it was about Sunday family day.
Yeah.
So if we don't do that anymore, I'm just kind of wondering how we're going to meet these interpersonal needs for spending time doing sort of, it's one thing to spend time together where it's like super focused. Okay, we're going to go and we're going to get this work done and we're going to do our homework and we're going to go to dinner and we're, that kind of stuff, rather than child directed.
Yes. No, I hear that. That's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you. To bring it back to the table, and that we talked about earlier in this conversation, is that they're evolving and they're changing, and that we need to change with them and to keep those lines of communication over. Nothing's ever going to be the same. It's like, the analogy of the stones in the stream. They're constantly on a meta level, just wearing away and they're shaping. And we need to be the water. We need to flow with them. And I find that just in what you said, that's an excellent suggestion, is to go back to the table and say, how do you feel about this? That's awesome. Thank you for sharing on that. I've got a few things here. Get the Inside Secrets to Guidance approach to parenting. And it's not going to be all about me, Katherin. It can't be all about me. But I think this conversation is really good, because a lot of the parents will have similar situations. So managing meltdowns, minimizing understandings, communication. We've spoken about communicate in a loving, supportive way, having open those communication and build stronger relationships. I think we've hit on those communicating better, opening, building stronger relationships. I touched on and I asked about boundaries. Is that something that you expand on with parents in great detail? Because it's not a 5-minute conversation, of course.
It's a big conversation, which is why I wanted to kind of just wonder what you meant by boundaries. Because everybody has a different perspective of what boundaries are. So, each of us is going to feel into what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. And that's essentially our personal boundaries. And everybody's are different, which is why, the myth of the United Front is that for me to pretend that your yes or okay is my yes or okay, maybe it is, but it's not for sure.
Yes.
But, it could very well be that we're completely looking at things from a different perspective.
Right.
So with the United Front, the idea is that if two parents who are co-parenting in raising a child have different perspectives on something, that one of them is supposed to lie and pretend that there's a united front, and that they both agree that this is not okay or that this is okay.
Right.
So that's my, I want to just wonder a little bit and spend time here going, well, for sure, we all have a sense of what's okay for us and what isn't okay for us.
Right.
And, some people, at least in families, oftentimes, they may talk about, it's not okay for you to talk to me that way. Right. And
then
so
this is a common theme right now, is the coming of age or getting old, or they're swearing back at the parent, or they're pushing back in conversation. I'm not doing this. I don't want to do that. And this is very common.
Yeah. So that's where, I would say, okay, so you just categorically have a rule around how people can talk to you.
Right.
And I would look at it slightly differently.
Right.
And I, one of the principles in the course is that the expression that someone's having is a reflection of their inner world.
Right.
And if you've got a kid who's coming unglued in ways that are objectionable to you, or that you find socially unacceptable, one road is to say, that's not okay. In this family, we won't speak to each other that way. Go to your room. Like, there's that boundary. Like, right? That word again.
Right.
And I would say in my universe, it's a reflection of a tragic expression, as you know, right? The tragic expression of unmet needs, a tragic expression of these unmet needs. And if they could do it socially, acceptably, maybe they could. Although the people who can do that are not usually children.
Right.
So it is part of being a child that they would struggle with knowing how to fall apart in a socially acceptable way. Right. So I can look at it as it's unacceptable. That's my boundary, go to the room, blah, 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 and go into that dance. Or I can look at it and go, wow, you're really having a hard time. And I can see you're super upset. And this is a reflection of your inner world. And sure, it'd be great if people could drown politely. But our coaching isn't to get people to drown politely. It's to get the observers that are watching someone drown impolitely to stay connected to that person and what is happening inside of them rather than your experience of them.
Right. Key.
Don't make it about you. Key. Don't make it about you.
Yep. Observation and that connection.
Boom. Yeah.
So, because we've got how many years, if you're a parent of 25 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, we've got so much conditioned, perspective, conditioned behavior that's affecting us when we communicate. And what I'm hearing you saying is they're 8 or they're 10 or they're 12. Their social emotional bandwidth is like minuscule. And so I like your suggestion.
I mean, you and I both know there's countless number of adults who drown tragically, whose expression of their unmet needs is done in incredibly socially unacceptable ways. And they also can be looked at as bad, irresponsible, every judgment word under the sun. Or we can look at them and say, if they could have done it better, they would have. And we can continue to punish people for the lack of skill, because that's essentially what's going on here. If people had the skills to regulate their emotions, they'd do it. If they didn't learn it, it's because every time they were having a meltdown, they were sent to their room, where what they learned was, don't show what's happening inside of you. What they learned was hide it. But
why are you crying? Stop crying. Get in your room.
Exactly.
Stand in the corner. Get outside. All of these things we've been pushed away for many, many years. And I see that. And when my boys were younger, I had to stop myself, because I was thinking, go to your room. I'm like, no, time out. And there's so much conversation around that thing about time out. Go to your room. As you would know, they don't work.
No,
in the biggest scheme of things, they don't work. So what we're telling people, as you said, is they're silencing them rather than opening and hearing them. Katherin, this is just amazing.
Well, if they had more skills, they would be able to speak about what they're feeling and what they're needing. But to even know that feelings and needs are connected would have taken an ecosystem in the family that linked feelings to needs.
Yes.
Most families link feelings to something outside of themselves. So you make me feel. So it's no longer my feelings are related to something inside of me. It's now about something you did that made me feel this way. And we get lost in that game of other people make us feel.
Yes.
And parents generally enforce that. How could you do that? You embarrass me.
Yes. You've really upset me. You've really shamed me. I feel so embarrassed around you.
And so all of that is saying essentially that mom and dad's feeling world is based on what you're doing over there. And there is
completely
a
different things
between the outer world and the inner world. But that conversation is not really describing that relationship. It's a blame conversation. And we all know we go into blame like this.
Yes.
And so, it would be no wonder that a child would have watched you and modeled after you how they relate to their inner world. And they too would have blamed their inner experience on their outer experience.
Yes.
Not
Absolutely.
recognizing the difference between the catalyst and the cause of how they feel.
I think this is a key in your program, this guidance approach, is understanding that difference, that the inner and the outer. We can read about it, we can watch YouTube videos, but just understanding is one thing. We've got to get our mind around it, and we've got to practice, right? Anything
Really.
that you learn. I mean, I love this guy, Jim Quick, right? So he's saying, progress, practice equals progress. It's not perfection. It's nothing else. It's just we need to practice it. And the more that we keep practicing it, to change a habit, Katherine, how difficult is it for an adult to change a habit? So if we've been habitually doing it this way, and now you're asking us to do it another way, we've got to be, as you know, Tony Robbins and these guys say, you've got to be shocked into this new state, right? Sometimes walk on fire, or be slapped in the face, or have your child do something really, really bad for you to go, oh, that's the trigger I need. Oh my goodness, I need to change me and the way I'm approaching it so we can work together better. And so parents, we've got to work on us. And if we have that language, if we have those strategies in place, then we need to practice it, right? Katherine, we're running out of time, but there's so much that we could cover here. I know that it's impossible in half an hour, an hour. Sure. If I can touch on something else, build strong relationships, eliminate the 3 R's. Pick from your list, from your guidance approach, what would you like to leave parents with today that they can get started with immediately, besides on, what could we leave them with that they can start on today?
Well, when you talk about the 3 R's, this is the retaliation, the rebellion, and the resistance. So whenever I have somebody come to me or my parenting course and I ask them, what are you working on? And they'll say, I just have the most resentful children. And, I want them to be grateful, and, could be that dialogue. And so whenever someone identifies their child as being resistant or retaliating or rebelling, those are the 3 R's that Thomas Gordon found in his research. And the 3 R's are cultivated and created by the seeds that we plant. So when we're planting the seeds in our relationship with our children, and we're using the because I said so, do it now. If you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. The rewards, the punishments, the threats, that whole approach. It is because of that you are now reaping a harvest that you don't like. But most parents don't have the ability, or were never had it explained to them in a way that they're able to go, oh, it had to do with way back then. All of those things that I was doing, they are what planted the seeds for the harvest that I'm reaping. So if you want to reap a different harvest, you don't need a different child. All you need is to change the way that you're approaching everyday, day-to-day experiences with them that gets you out of activating the 3 R's. And that's where the training is important, is that you basically are moving from one world to another. And to be able to cultivate that new culture in your family system, all habits require support. They need an ecosystem for them to take root. They need to have a culture so that they can have support. Because I know from my own work that habits are very difficult to establish. New habits are hard to establish in the absence of community.
Oh, in the absence of community. Right.
It's so helpful to have community supporting you as you journey to create a different ecosystem in your family.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point, Katherine. I relate it to mums groups, dads groups, and it's always been there. The tribe, the community, from our ancestors. It's always been about that. And the parent community now, because of the internet, because we're so, our families are not in the same town, living under the same roof, and all of this stuff. The dynamic, it's completely different. And mum and dad are both working. The siblings are left at 16 years old, or it's just uncle lives on the other side of the country. We don't have that nucleus. We don't have that nucleus to take care of each other. And grandma picks up the kids from school. Parents, we all know it's changed. So that parenting community, like you talking about, accountability, support, picking kids up, keeping an eye on them. Oh, did you see so-and-so did this? I just wanted to let you know that bond. And I've found, I mean, living like you know, in Singapore and Taiwan, and you were in Hong Kong, and now we're in New Zealand. We move.
Yeah.
So we need, you know, that online community I've found to be so valuable to me. And having those Skype calls, having those FaceTime calls with siblings. We need to embrace technology and use it creatively, right? And how we can help each other. So, Katherine, that leads me into the final part that I wanted to share with people. I have signed up for Katherine's course, and I am overwhelmed with the incredible information that I've got even at the beginning before I really get my teeth into the course. And parents, this is why I wanted to bring Katherine on, because I was so overwhelmed with just the material that resonated with me and the words and how you present it, the language you're using, that I just wanted to get you on here. And I know that you have a special link to share with the parents, and they can come on board and have a look at your community, look at the material that you're offering, and be like me. Join the program.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited, Hanson, that you've joined in, and that, you know, next week in the group coaching call, everybody's going to get to meet you. And it really is the conscious parenting revolution. And, you know, we're changing how we parent. Parents who are drawn to your community, my community, are parents that are like, you know what? I survived, but I couldn't say I thrived. And I spent a lot of my life working through the parenting that I was exposed to get to the other side of it. And, you know, it became a life's journey. And so when we recognize that there are parts of us that are, you know, still grappling with our own family of origin systems that maybe silenced us, that we have difficulty speaking up and speaking for ourselves because we learn not to. And that we don't want that to be passed on to our children. And yet we don't have another framework for parenting, and we don't know how to address the day-to-day conflicts. So we all need this training because, as I say, you know, none of us have a manual. So we don't know. Nobody gave us the manual. It's totally like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be able to figure out the most complex of human relationships all on my own. Not so great. So you'll put the link in. Yeah,
I'll put the link in the comments for the parents to get on board, and hopefully we can see them in. I mean, if they registered this week, in the next couple of days, they can join us in the community with me and a couple of the other parents that you know already put up their hand and said, "I want in," because they know that. Me as a coach for 25 years, I don't know everything. I only know what I don't know, and this is why I want to. You know, I spend money and I invest in, you know, to learn, and I really encourage, and I'm an advocate for this with parents. As you said, no instruction manual. We need to have frameworks. We need to be accountability. We need those communities. So parents, look out for the link below, and please do share back your positive feedback, or otherwise give us suggestions on how we can help you better as we go along this path together. And Katherine, it's been absolutely my privilege to have you on with us, and I really, really did learn a lot, and I look forward to being your model student in your program.
I can't wait. It'll be great. So just so your parents know, it's a 90-day program, and every week we meet kind of like this, Zoom online with a group of parents who are enrolled. And because you're overseas in New Zealand and I'm in the United States right now, I believe that the 9 p.m. New York time course is in New Zealand. I don't even know what time it is, like in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I know. I spotted that. And so you've got 2 a day, and I spotted that one was about 3 p.m. here. So that would be also morning in Singapore, where we have a lot of families. So whichever way.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of Hong Kong people as well from my years in Hong Kong. And so for Hong Kong, it's on Fridays at 10 a.m. So it would be Singapore at 10 a.m. as well.
10 a.m. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
And then all of the training is pre-recorded. So people get access to the library where they watch the trainings, and then they come on for the coaching and the integration.
Live coaching.
Right.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, Katherine, I'm going to wrap up with just a little thank you. And on behalf of the team here at GrowthWorks and myself and my boys, which we will get more familiar with inside your program, Conscious Parenting Revolution. We've had Katherine Sellery on board with us, and we'd like to thank you very much. Katherine, please stay on the line. I'm just going to finish up with this little reel, and we'll have a chat.